Okay, over to you, Warren. I think we're at 7:30.
We are. So, is everybody comfy? Okay, let's begin. You're going to hear some of this each time I start. For those of you who don't want to, you can stick your fingers in the ears, please. Anyway, a few introductory comments for tonight. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to this second of our 6 Almont lectures. I am Warren Thorngate, one of 4 people who makes this thing go. The ones who do most of the work should be acknowledged, and I'd love to do that. So here they are: Mel Turner, Jan Johns, and Glenda Jones. All make wonderful contributions to keep this going into our 17th year, I think it is. Sorry, I have to read my notes. If you want to know more about future lectures, or, well, hi back. Please go to the Almont Lectures website, which is called, wouldn't you know, Almont Lectures, as one word, .com. And you can get more information about upcoming lectures and so forth. Now, your microphones are turned off. If you do want to ask questions, please wait until the end of the presentation tonight, and our speakers will be happy to answer them as best they can. Okay, full disclosure, as is so commonly said these days. This is about libraries, and one of the reasons I wanted to have it was because I'm a member of the board of the library here in town. And it's my opportunity now to say how wonderful it is to be that and how much it's taught me about not libraries. When I think of a library, I think of one at a university. Not very inviting place these days. And one of the things that has amazed and taught me in my term on the board is how libraries, in the public sphere at least, have changed quite dramatically since I was young, so many years ago. Tonight we're going to hear a bit about libraries in the public sphere, the past, present, and future of libraries, which I was originally asked our main speaker, Christine Rowe, who's the chief librarian at the Almont and Pakenham libraries, to give. She had a wonderful idea to have 2 colleagues of hers also make presentations and react to each other to make the presentation more lively. And they both accepted. So we also have, in addition to Christine, who's in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, Jill McCubbin, who's directly below her with an orange background, and Monica Blackburn, who's in the lower right-hand corner with some kind of an interesting background. There it is there. So the 3 of them are going to engage us tonight. And that's all I have to say for an introduction. So let me turn it over to you, and I'll come back after they finished, and we'll have a lively discussion, I hope. So thanks to all of you for doing this, and you're on.
I'm on. Before we get into the panel, I just wanted to give everybody a bit of a background on public libraries. As Warren said, it's going to be very brief. And it just, I'm hoping that it'll just give you a bit of perspective on why we do what we do. So the first thing to keep in mind with public libraries is our core value is intellectual freedom. And so with this core value, it impacts everything that we do in the library. So from making sure that we have a very diverse collection that meets all the needs of the community. So it can't be just, what we want to read, even very tempting, or just a certain select group of the community, but it has to reach everybody's needs and everybody's wants, or that's what our aim is. The same thing for our facilities. We have to make sure that it's open to everyone. So when we're open, anybody can come in. Anybody can come in and use the meeting room if it's available. And so that is something that is very important, and something that is part of all of our collection policies, all of our policies at the library. And so in order to do that in a library, to make sure that we can protect and promote intellectual freedom, we are under the Public Libraries Act. And in Ontario, this causes, or probably everywhere, it causes some confusion because in a municipality, the vast majority of funding comes from municipal taxpayers. And so a big question is, you're under the municipality, so why do you have a separate governing board that makes all the decisions? And why do you have separate policies? And it's in order, one of the main reasons is to protect a library's intellectual freedom. So that is something that all public libraries share. But the area that we're really going to focus on tonight is how libraries have varied. And I feel that how we vary is how we've really grown in the past 20 years. And what has happened, the biggest shift, and I'm sure Monica and Jill will agree, is that, well, first of all, the libraries have really focused from before. In the past, it was the things in the library. And now it's about the people and how we serve them. And so if you think back, Warren sort of talked about it a bit earlier, is that when we think, and he said university libraries, but I remember many of the libraries I went to. And when you'd walk into the library, you'd walk in and traditionally there'd be the big, huge circulation desk, but it would be stacks and stacks and stacks of books. And you might be able to find like a little, really dangerous little seat to sit on, a wobbly seat somewhere, but a lounge chair was like completely rare. There'd be a reading room maybe tucked up somewhere, but I mean, you would never sit and drink a coffee and flip through a magazine. That was just not something that happened in the library. And so I feel that in our fairly recent history, we were challenged with the big box stores, right? The big box Chapters and Indigos, and they came in and they showed libraries something, this is what people want. This is what people want in their space. And for libraries, that was a turning point where we didn't resist it. We said, oh yeah, that's true. We have to adapt. And so I would say a successful library now, one of the central pieces is about finding places for people. And in my summary, when I wrote to Warren about this talk, I had said that we were coming into a Renaissance period for libraries. And I believe that when I think back, if you ever, any of us, think about those old drawings of a really, really old library, we picture a huge room, scrolls, but generally it's a huge room and the walls are lined with books. But the central part of that space, the biggest footprint, was the place for people. But we lost that like along the way. We just filled that room and took away the place for people. But I feel that now that we're going back and really making that space for people, we're having this renaissance and we're really finding new ways to grow. And so it's a really exciting time. It wasn't just the challenge of the bookstores that brought our focus to a new level in internet. Libraries, instead of just ignoring this new technology, for libraries, we became the source, the access point for internet access for many people in the community. And not only just the source of it, but in many communities, we became the place, and we still are today, where people learn how to access it safely, and they also learn technology. So it's by looking at what's going on and adapting, we've grown in that direction. And then the same goes for ebooks. So all of these things that came on and people sort of questioned the place of libraries today because of these new advances. We saw ebooks and we actually adopted them into our collection. And so now we have a really great new collection that has changed libraries, particularly something like Mississippi Mills, where many of the people here would be gone for summer or would be gone for winter, and we would lose connection with those residents for many months. But now that we have ebooks, they're still accessing our resources from anywhere that they are. So I feel that all of these advances that have happened in our time working in libraries has really given libraries a whole new path. And so it's a very exciting time to be in libraries. And it's not just theory. What we're seeing too, it makes sense when you see Halifax and Ottawa, soon to be Ottawa, and Calgary. They're building, when a city is announcing to the world that they've arrived, they're on the map, and sort of they're building really impressive landmarks in their libraries. And it's a way to say, if you live here or you travel here or what, we're not just fulfilling your basic needs, but this community recognizes your innovative and your cultural and your intellectual needs as well. And so by being with this pivot from things to people and to seeing and to accepting these new innovations, I think we're increasing our image in this world. And I do think, before I even get into this, almost there, this whole pandemic, that was a rapid growth for libraries too, in changing how we had to, within a month, figure out how to deliver library service online, curbside. And so I think that we've proven that we are resilient. And so I'm excited to talk tonight about the things that we're doing that you probably, for many of you, have no idea has been going on. So thank you. Tonight, I'm just going to we have some questions, and I'll be answering sometimes along with Monica and Jill. So thank you. So I'll start. Dun, dun, dun. The first one is the beginning. I'm going to start with Monica Blackburn. How did you get here?
I've been here forever. I started when I was in grade 8. I worked then right up till grade 13. I typed up all the vertical file cards and shelved books. And I went away for a little while. I went to school. I got married and had my first baby. And then I came back and worked at the library. And I started working at the library because my mom worked at the library forever as well. So, but I really loved it, always did. Started with 3 3-hour shifts a week. That was all I did. Looked after my baby, and it slowly grew and grew. I took courses in cataloging and collection development, and went to umpteen conferences and learned a lot on the job and from colleagues. And now I'm here still after 32 years, I think.
And you worked with Elizabeth Kelly.
I did work with Elizabeth Kelly. Yep. She was my first boss. And then I Then not too many. Elizabeth, Marcia Shannon, I worked with her, and then with Peter Nelson, yeah, and Pam, and you. Yep.
And Jill, how did you stumble into Mississippi Mills?
I moved to Almont in 1997 to open a bookstore on Mill Street in Almont. At Amalgamation, I was hired at the Pakenham branch for their first staff, actually, other than Mary Jack, who was the head librarian there when Pakenham was its own township. And I worked there for quite a few years, and working at the bookstore and raising 2 children. And then I left Pakenham to do other things for a while. And then in 2013, I was hired by the Almont branch, or 2012 or 13, for relief work. And I did that for a few years. And then probably around, and then they kept me. And I'm now working 4 days in Almont. And off and on, I've continued to work in Pakenham a bit, but now I'm mostly in Almont.
And for me, I'm the newbie, and for me it was I had been working in the Rideau Lakes Public Library, which is 5 rural branches, and it's between Kingston and Ottawa. And I had only worked at Rideau Lakes Public Library. And similar experience as Monica, is I started working very few shifts at the library, and then loved it. And went back to school when I had young kids. And but Rideau Lakes was the only library I knew. And so I started to think I should probably try another library system. I had been there for, I believe, 16 or 17 years. And so I was always sort of looking at job postings. But this was the one that I actually came to. I actually did a secret mission. I came on a Saturday to Almont, and I checked out the library. And then I went to the Artists Collective, the 10 Artists Collective at the museum. And I remember being there and that was it for me. I was like, I really would love to serve in this community. So that's when I applied. So it's a very unique community to have that, it has the rural, but just to have such a, cultural hub too, that mix is, what was really appealing.
I just wanted to add one thing. When we did the research to open our bookstore here in Almont in 1997, we looked at all the census and demographics. And Almont, for its size of town, was one of the highest library circulations at the time. And that was one of the reasons why we chose to open a bookstore here. But it was a very strong book community and a very strong library use. So that was kind of a neat thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the next is a key to a successful library system, and I don't know if I said this earlier, is it must reflect the community it serves. So I'll start with Jill this time.
Okay.
How does Mississippi Mills Public Library reflect Mississippi Mills?
So I thought about this question. We had these questions ahead of time. And what I want to suggest is that Mississippi Mills is a place with a lot of different organizations full of volunteers and people like, and we probably all know most of them, but like there's Bridging Generations in Pakenham, the Mississippi Mills Youth Center, CareBridge, the new home hospice organization. These are all people at School Box North with caring people that are running organizations right here in our town. And the library, more and more, has become very strong partners and has very good relationships with these organizations of groups of people who are keen in our community. And as they've been developing more programs and more focused programs, the library has been developing similar alongside with them. And some of the examples that I was thinking of are the hospice coordinator is now coming to both branches in Pakenham and Almont. once a week for 2-hour chat sessions with people. And the home hospice collection is a new collection here at the library in Pakenham and Elma. We also have graphic novel writing workshops that we did with the Mississippi Mills Youth Center before the pandemic, but we have continued to have strong relationships with the Youth Center. And they were looking for something kind of fun and more teen oriented to do. And the library was a good partner there. And we have grown a graphic novel collection steadily since that time. The bicycle friendly, like the bicycle, Mississippi Mills Bicycle Month was a very strong group before the pandemic. Through the pandemic, we have a counter on the OVRT here, and it's been telling us that like bicycle use is growing, and the Mississippi Mills Public Library became a certified provincial bicycle friendly business to help support locals and tourists who come to our town doing that kind of activity. And one last one is the Appleton Library. I mean, this is possibly some bit of new news, but Appleton Museum and Mississippi Mills Library have been discussing how to serve Ramsey a little bit better and possibly having a drop-off point at the Appleton Museum. And that's like a partnership that we're really excited by as well. So I think when you look at the different organizations and different partnerships and relationships that the library is building, that's showing how we reflect what Mississippi Mills is asking for. Anyway.
Yeah. Monica?
I was thinking more about our collections, and Jill was doing more programming, so that was perfect.
Yeah.
We have a great local history collection that has, access for anyone there. A lot of one-offs of genealogy and local history, of course. The art gallery, because we are a very artistic community. We have the art gallery that we have a volunteer curator who does that, which is fantastic, and we provide the space. And one thing that I've noticed that really reflects the changing demographics of our community from when I first started 30 some years ago, when it was a very Anglo community. Our collection has become really diverse, much more than it was 30 years ago. So those are the big changes that I've seen that reflect the community, because our community is changing a lot.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I, just coming from a very rural library system, and maybe it is unique to Mississippi Mills, but well, the Friends have just started at the library, and the amount of success that they've achieved is, I know, extraordinary. I do not think that you would get that so quickly. And I know that Rita Lakes had a very long, had Friends for several years, and it's it's just a different here. It seems like a very giving community. Same with the Elizabeth Kelly, having that foundation support. So I do feel that that's pretty unique to Mississippi Mills. Okay. So when people think of libraries, they think generally of the things, but when staff think of libraries, they see the people. People represent our greatest source of delight and dismay. So Monica, a moment of delight.
A moment of delight. I have had the pleasure of running our baby time, where mums come with babies as young as a week old up until 12 months old. And at first I thought, what am I going to be able to do with babies? It is fantastic. It's quite amazing. We do a lot of repetition of rhymes and tummy tickles and things. And it's really amazing to see babies who, at the first session just sort of lie there, and by the 6th session, they're anticipating being, flown to the moon. The real delight of baby time, though, is mums coming back and telling me that they have met lifelong friends in baby time, and that their children are best friends. and that's, you know, one of the biggest reasons that we do it. And it's really nice to see that success.
And definitely the pandemic, that first one that you did.
Yeah, the pandemic was really hard because I knew all these new moms in Elmont were not connecting with each other. So I started this summer doing an outdoor baby time, and they would come for the half hour that I was there, and then they'd stay for another hour outside chit-chatting and really, and they loved it. It was just such a, you know, finally getting to meet other young moms in the community. It was great.
We'll stick to the happy right now. Jill, a moment
Source of delight. Source of delight for me is really getting to know the people who come to the library. I love that you get to know people by name. I especially really enjoy teenagers that come to the library at first and come with or preteens, they come with their parents. They're awkward, they're shy. They sometimes don't come back, but lots of them do. And you really see the change of they're comfortable with the librarians. They're asking about the books that they're interested in. They'll talk about them. I know them by name. They know me by name. That's a big source of delight for me, to see that age group of 12 to 14 start to enjoy the library and to feel it's a place for them.
Okay, dismay, Jill.
Dismay. There's not a lot of dismay. I wrote down a couple of things. One thing that's a big source of dismay is when people use Kleenexes as library bookmarks. And they come back and we find Kleenexes in the books. Total dismay.
Yeah.
And the other one is sometimes when our tech fails, that's always a bit of a stressor, because we're here to serve people who are looking for certain things sometimes. And our tech is generally pretty solid, but as tech always is, it's sometimes unreliable. And that's always a bit of dismay, because when you have to say, I'm sorry, I just can't get it to work right now, then somebody isn't being served, or they're not getting what they wanted at the library. And that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Monica, do you have a dismay?
Sort of on the same, yeah, a couple of things. The Kleenex is really disgusting. That's more disgusting than dismay. But what I find difficult is when on sort of the opposite end of baby time, we have so many seniors that use the library, and we get to know them so well. We see them at least once a week, some of them, or every other week. And we really get to know them. We get to know their families sort of sometimes too. And then all of a sudden you realize that they're not coming to the library anymore. And that can be really difficult. Sometimes it's because they've moved or have had to go into long-term care or have passed away. And that's hard. Yeah.
And on that, I mean, we're not going to get, but I do feel that that's something that is overlooked a lot, but it's impacting libraries a lot. We have the conversation is that we are seeing things, and and that, you know, I know Jill has had to take we've fortunately had her trained in the mental health and safety training. I would love all staff having that. It's just, you're seeing things and sometimes you really don't know what to do. And even in these little towns, this is happening, and they're coming in because when we're open, you're welcome to spend the day. And when they're with you for the day, you see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It does cause a lot of dismay.
Mm-hmm.
On a somewhat lighter note, my funniest dismay, it was at the other library, so I'm not kidding you, but I don't have as many great tales now that I'm hidden in the back. I was working in one of the rural branches, and sort of like what Monica said, there was an elderly gentleman that would come in pretty much every time we were open. And he struck up a conversation with the woman, and then she left. And he came up to me and he said, I want you to arrange a date. And I said, I can't do that. And he was really angry, and his not the bachelor pad. Like, I'm not setting you up for this. But yeah, that was a very uncomfortable, and it lasted for quite a while. He was bitter for quite a while about that. But those are the sad days.
Yeah.
So the shift from focusing on things to focusing on people is also reflected, sort of what Jill and Monica's already talked, on new programs offered. Is there a program you would like to see offered soon or in the near future at the library?
Me?
Oh,
Jill?
sorry. Yeah, Monica. We'll start with Monica this time, I guess.
I would like to do more literacy training, and we do it during the summer, but I think some ongoing literacy training during the year would be nice. And I would also really like to start a men's book club. So we started, Margot started an adult book club years ago, and it was all women, and it is still all women. And there must be men that read out there, is there not, Warren?
Sorry, I'll have to stop drooling.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Jill, any?
Yeah, I have a couple of suggestions. I just wanted to say that I've just maybe grabbed this second to talk about what programs we actually have. I mean, I won't talk about them, but I'll just bring this up. About a year ago, and it's not just programs, it's programs and offers from the library. We compiled a list of 77 things you might not know about your library. It's posted in the library. It has like tons of stuff that the library offers and runs and that kind of stuff. And recently I was looking through what we do now, and we've added probably another dozen or so. So, I mean, I can send you that list if you ever want to have it. But on top of that, I mean, I have thought for the future, it's interesting because I wrote 3 things down, and one of them was a book club for men. I didn't even know Monica was going to put that.
We didn't even talk about it.
No, and I put book club for men. I thought maybe it would be a good time to try the human book
Human
program,
library.
when you can check out a human and really you're just checking out a time to chat with a human. We did do that probably 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe longer. And it has come up once in a while again. It's a neat thing, like you book a time with somebody who's offered they're going to be a human book. That's what it is, human book. And you get to learn about their life. Like maybe they were a soldier in Afghanistan, or maybe they, were a librarian in the Arctic, and you find out a bit about them. I think that it might be another chance to do that in the next couple of years. The book club for men, I thought, well, she did say in 5 years. So like in 5 years, we might be able to find enough book men for a book club. And the other thing I thought might be fun, sometime in the future would be a sort of a show and tell time for adults. It's kind of like the human book, but, some people just have a prized possession or a heirloom or a collection of things that they love, and they can't share them with people because, you can't invite your friends over to always see your stuff. But to bring it to the library and have sort of a set time during the week where people could show people their prized things, it might be kind of a fun thing to do for a community of all ages. There could be a children's one and a adult one, but anyway, those are some ideas.
Cute. It just brought me right back. I did not get that brownie badge or the whatever for the collection.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember it was like I found out that I had to go to the meeting and I had to have a collection like SAP. So I just grabbed all my Barbies and threw them in a garbage.
Don't bring those to our show and tell.
And haircut. Didn't get the badge. For me, I was thinking, it was actually even Warren had talked about this a long time ago at a board meeting, was a sewing machine, like a sewing club, like something like that, like doing, if we had the space to have like, you know, even take the partnerships with the art groups even more, having like maybe the museum have like a mini teaching us how to weave or something like that. I'd love something like that to happen. So that's
Nice.
you got me off on my Barbie. So, so the library purchases over 2,500 items every year. Collection development includes buying new material, accepting donations, and weeding collections. These necessary tasks cause some of the greatest controversies for any library. So, Monica, how do you select material and how has this changed?
We deal with Library Bound. They're a wholesaler in Waterloo, and they buy in bulk, so we can get books on discount from them. But they also have staff that sort of pre-vet books as well. So going there to purchase books virtually, I don't physically go to Waterloo, but they create lists of recommended books for topics. They'll create lists 3 times a year for bestsellers. So it sort of saves me a lot of time. I used to have to go through every publisher's catalog and physically go through all of those catalogs and try and pick out the ones that I thought would be good for the community. So that saves a lot of time. Also, we take recommendations from the public, and provided it's a book that I think would have a broader appeal to the one person who recommended it, we usually purchase it. We take recommendations from staff. We look at Quill and Choir and the New York Times bestseller list, and Maclean's used to have a great list of bestsellers as well. And also knowing the community. I think I've been here for plus 30 years and probably purchasing the bulk of the books for over 15, almost 20 years. So it's just sort of, you sort of know what's going to get read in the community.
Is there a collection you love to buy for? Your favorite collection to?
Picture books. Children's picture books, I would say, is my favorite. Yeah. And then some of my favorite authors, you know, Mem Fox and Martin Waddell, and yeah. So whatever they put out on the market, it's going to be purchased for the Lamont Library. One Pakenham. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
And that's Jill, having had the bookstore. I mean, that's also a great partnership. The bookstores and the library as well. We used to do events when we could, and I know that I believe the Friends is planning something as well. But one thing, publishers and bookstores, I think the reason, and Jill, you just the good relationship is because we introduce people to authors and then they'll go buy. Like if they might not buy the first one because they're scared to try a new author, but they'll try it at the library and then buy a copy. Did you find that with having the bookstore?
Oh yeah, bookstores often cite libraries as a good reason to be in a community, and it's not because they're taking circulation away from a library. It's because it's a community that supports local endeavors, gets involved with a community group. It's those reasons. And sales for bookstores and library circulation stats can both be high. There's very little conflict there. It's really almost all beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Jill, I'll ask you, because we've been dealing with a lot of the donations. Have you had any issues with donations?
Donations are always a bit of an issue. Like not crazy issue, but you know, there are 13,000 people in Mississippi Mills, a lot of those people have books they want to donate, and they think of the library. We don't have staff for that or space for that. And the library gets like a lot of books. Christine mentioned the amount we buy each year. We're growing our collections in many ways. Donations are often just duplicates. So we generally don't accept donations. We will accept donations of very new books or books that someone is just absolutely sure that we should take. And we try to be as welcoming as possible. It is tricky to try to explain to somebody why it's not it's not a fit for us when they are coming and saying, these are great books, you'll really love to have them. So, I mean, we sometimes have sold books for proceeds to the library, but even that can get out of hand. Like, we just don't have that kind of space. So donations continue to happen, but we try to curb the massive flow that there could be and point them towards the book outlet in Carleton Place. It's run through Lanark Community Services. They take sometimes book donations, the hub does as well, or hold on to your book donations for when you hear of a used book sale and donate them then. The library's friends do that as well. And there is a current
Right now.
used book sale coming up in November, and the Friends of the Library are accepting donations there. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I've had donations with ties, because I'm not dealing with that here, but I've had donations like at Rita Lakes. I don't know if you would get it here, but we would get a box every year from Almost the Scientologists. And
We don't.
That was a yearly gift that we would send back. But the other one, as far as a challenge is, there was, and I can't remember what group it was, and they had donated a book. It was a children's book on creationism, animated, and the CEO at Rita Lakes before me had put it into, as you would, into the religious mythology section, and they challenged, and that's why we have to have a collection policy. They challenged the library to put it into science. And so you get those kind of
Issues.
but with donate, that is something that you can run into. So on to, Jill sort of touched on it already, but Monica is the master weeder. I don't know if you want to be known as that, sorry. Weeding can be a public relations tightrope.
Yeah.
So Jill talked a bit of, how do you explain it as this is a necessary job for the library?
Yeah, weeding, for those of you who don't know that term, it's culling the collection. I do it top to bottom every year. In January, I start with the adult fiction and I just do the whole library collection, and then I go to Pakenham and I do that whole collection from top to bottom. And it's basically shelving space is the big thing. If we're adding 2,500 items to the collection, 2,500 items have to leave the collection because we don't have endless amount. You know, as Christine said in her opening, you used to walk into a library like this library, and it would have tall shelves. And I've been to libraries that even they had tall shelves, and then they had books on top of that. Because they would never get rid of a book. We're not an archives and we're not a museum. And there are books that have seen their day, and it could be because of the condition that they're in. It could be the content of the book. And I was thinking about, really big shifts in weeding over the last few years that have come up for me. One of them was the time when they said, the Brontosaurus is actually never happened. They had the wrong neck and head on the wrong body of the dinosaur. So I had to go through the dinosaur books and say, well, this one is all about brontosauruses, and can I really give that to a child, as nonfiction, as a factual book? And no, I couldn't. So I had to redevelop the dinosaur collection. And then Pluto was all of a sudden not a planet anymore. And then, but the really, really big one was when Truth and Reconciliation happened, because we had a quite, shelves of books on Indians of North America, which is the term that was used. And as soon as that Truth and Reconciliation whole thing happened, I probably got rid of 90% of that collection because it was embarrassing with the books that were on the shelf. And so that was a huge one, but also medical books go out of date and travel books go out of date. And, what used to get was the fad. Like years ago, everybody was, Dracula books. Like every single book had some sort of Dracula character in it. And now, no one reads them. So why should we have them on the shelf? So we try to have a good balance of what's really current and what people are reading, and classics as well. And we're at a stage too that our budget is we have a good budget for books. So I just replaced Two Solitudes because our copy was, in really bad condition. So instead of throwing it out, I replaced it with a really lovely brand new copy, didn't I, Jill?
You did.
Yeah. So, weeding is a tricky one. And it's particularly when you have to do a huge weed. When we got our new shelves that were lower for accessibility and for friendlier atmosphere, that was a really huge weed that we did, and some people were not happy.
Another important part I think about the weeding is if you don't do some weeding, you don't have room for collections that you realize are missing.
Yeah.
And we have now tagged collections for Pride titles, and we have tagged a collection for Black authored and Black illustrated titles. And we have tagged a collection of Indigenous authored and Indigenous illustrated titles. And there are hundreds of titles in these collections, and they're important for a library to hold. Now, for many reasons I'm not going to go into, but you can't do that if you're holding on to the out-of-date titles or the ones that aren't. So that's just one more part of it. And just to point out too, we don't weed the local history section.
No, never.
So local history will be there, and it is a little bit of an archive, not like Lanark Archives, but if you're into local history, don't worry, those are not being weeded because those books are hard to find. Yeah.
And many one-offs.
Yeah.
Because there is a science to it. That's just library science, but we follow a science.
Set guidelines.
Set guidelines. I know we're probably running close to time for questions, so I'll just quickly find a couple of my favorite questions left and then open it. I will go to anything we do that people do not know about. Jill.
We have a YouTube channel that has story times for Monica, which are pretty much brand new for us, that they're online. Like I said, we now have a home hospice person who's coming and talking. Nobody knows about that. That's brand new. We have knit kits that people can take out. We will soon have radon test kits that people can take out. We have a huge collection of DVDs, movies and series, British series. We have quite a lot of stuff. I mean, I could read a couple of the 77 things. We have a Facebook community now. We have ukuleles to borrow. We have a library of things that you can borrow things like projectors. You can borrow like a book bag of like titles that like are in your interest group. We have a screen you can borrow. We have Chromebooks that we're lending out. We lend out Wi-Fi hotspots now. These are all new things in the last 6 months. Wi-Fi hotspots allow you to have internet connection when you don't have an interconnection at home. It uses the cellular network to bring you Wi-Fi. They're going out regularly. Yeah, so there's a lot of things you might not realize are going on at the library. We don't have a lot of our groups coming back, but we did speak to somebody just recently. There's going to be another knitting group coming to the library in Pakenham and here, knitting comfort shawls for the hospice. And there's still children's programs. We have a 3D printer that we had 3D printing camps for children, and you can book a time with our tech tutor to learn about 3D printing with your child or just as an adult. So there's more, but I'm not going to go on.
Did you have anything to add, Mark?
No.
Jill's got it covered.
It does.
Okay, before the last question of the night, for what are you excited about? Monica.
Oh, pre-pandemic, when there was possibilities of money, I would have said an addition to the library, because we had just completed our space needs assessment, and we are desperately busting at the seams at our Elmont branch. So pre-pandemic, that was the big excitement that it, could possibly happen before I retire. No, I'm not so sure, but that still excites me, thinking that that hopefully will happen at some point.
Jill?
I think I'll say the same thing. I mean, there isn't any one specific thing I'm looking forward to. I really would look forward to that.
Yeah.
I just continue to look forward to, sharing good experiences with people. I mean, there's nothing better than sharing good times, and people talk about stories, they talk about books, they tell us what's new in their world. We tell them what's new that the library can do. It's just a fun time, and that's what I continue to look forward to doing.
Mm-hmm. And more of it, right? When this pandemic is, getting back to some semblance of what we used to be able to do, and what we still, more things that we want to do.
And they happen so quickly. Like somebody comes in with an idea and it's just like, yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I did write down about exciting, because I do feel like the working from home now, that's going to be probably a reality. I am interested to see how that impacts libraries working here, and just seeing the demand on that, like what kind of model we can make here that will make it work for people, Interesting. Okay, so thank you. Warren, I don't know, or Jan, if you wanted to, if we should open for questions.
Oh yeah, it's a good time to do it. Does anybody have a question? Pat, looks like you do.
She's muted.
Unmute here. My question is, just before pandemic, we were in a real uproar over the cancellation of interlibrary loan. Would any one of you three, or all three of you, like to talk about the future of interlibrary loan? Because for our small library, it was such a blessing. And I just wonder what the future of it is.
I can answer that. Interlibrary loan is alive and well. We did have an interruption because the government took away our funding for our van system that we had all through the province. And we now do it through Canada Post, which has increased the amount of staff time required to do interlibrary loan, but we still do it, and it's still quite active. It was rip-roaring busy, and then the pandemic hit. A lot of libraries stopped running their interlibrary loan altogether. I would say more than half the libraries in Ontario stopped. Slowly, they've all come back online. No, I can't even say all of them. Some of them are starting up in January. Toronto Public, for instance, just started again in a couple of weeks ago, sending out their material, which is fantastic. Universities have not started yet, but I'm doing interlibrary loan. So ask away for stuff, Pat. There's no problem.
Other questions?
I think Susan Macaulay has a question.
Susan?
I do. I think I'm not sure. First of all, I just would like to say that I think that the library is absolutely amazing. I'm totally blown away by all the things that you do. I wish I had more time to take advantage of all of the programs and services that you offer. Perhaps as time goes on, I will. Um, but yeah, I think you're doing an incredible job, and thank you very much. I'd like to know, and I think I asked when I first joined the library when I got to Almont, if there was a collection of books by local authors. And I believe the answer was no. I wonder if that's changed. And if it hasn't changed, I would certainly encourage you to have a collection of local authors. Thank you.
That's
Anybody want?
we're all like,
Yeah.
So that is, I mean, I know that Monica purchases a lot, but I guess just making Susan a collection, or at least even having spine label. I don't know if you even,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great idea.
Or we could tag them in the catalog, local
Yeah.
author, the same way
Yeah.
we've done the tagging for the Black author or Indigenous illustrator.
Yeah, that's great.
So just where I lived previously in North Hatley, Quebec, it was a very small place, and they also had a wonderful library, and they had a section where you could go that was just local authors. So it was like dedicated, and yeah.
Yeah, makes it easy.
Although sometimes you won't get the same circulation you might think, Susan, because if you put local authors just in a local author section, lots of people don't have interest in looking at local author sections, right? And they might not find them. Whereas if they were in with the like books on space and one was by a local author, they might go, oh, I'll take this one. You know, so sometimes it's kind of tricky to decide what will highlight them best, but we could try it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
You guys are the experts.
Other questions? I think Jocelyn, you had one. Oh, you need to turn your microphone on.
Oh.
There you go.
Am I on now?
Yep.
You're-
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Two things.
Oh,
If you publish that link,
Oops, sir, we have a
I
broken
can't.
connection there.
Very garbly.
Can you try again? Now we can't, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Frustrating.
You could type your question.
Do you want to type in chat?
is,
and in the chat, Lucy has written that Friends of the Library are currently accepting donations for the book sale. See the Friends Facebook page.
And they want the donations dropped off to 113 Cars Street. The front
Not the
porch of,
library.
not the library, 113 Cars Street is bring your donations there. Right, Lucy? It is.
Cars is in CARSS.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just as at the edge of Almont.
And don't forget to go and review the auction. It's got 2 more days to bid on the Friends auction. All are wonderful. So I just have to put a plug in there because
Yes, that's a good plug.
have to
Yeah.
bid each other tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a chat.
There it is. Can you put your list of services on your bulletin board?
Yes, our list of services, well, an incomplete list of services is on the bulletin board. The services are always changing. Some have left. We don't have things like the travel log back yet and different things through the pandemic, but many have come back. Our website has a lot of the programs and services listed, and our bulletin board has a lot of the specific things that you can get out of a library. So it's generally as up to date as we can keep it. It won't always be 100% up to date, but 90% maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And time for another question or two, if we have any. Well, perhaps I can ask one. Recently, I could have sworn I read something about a new library conception that got rid of librarians.
Hmm.
Have you heard that as well? And if so, what do you think?
So that's the Kingston,
Probably.
yeah.
Huh.
That's the one where they're going to, we were talking about the,
Extended hours.
go in and just like Anytime Fitness, where you can go in 24 hours a day and use facilities. I'm going to be interested to see how it works in Kingston. I think the concern that we were having, and we sort of touched on it, is people come to the library. You know, it would be difficult. People would feel safe in that place if it was unmanned. So it's a tricky situation. I think that it's still far off for us because everything would have to have the security, the RFID security tags, and we'd have to have the security system in place. But I do know, like, it is, somebody had said that it was in Toronto in some of the branches, and it is I know in some of the Scandinavian libraries, they're doing it. So it obviously works. But I'm in.
You're not losing sleep over it.
I'm not
for here.
sleep over it. I don't feel that this size of community, the demand to have a 24-hour at this point is there. And I also feel that a tremendous amount of what we do is that interaction with people. But, you know, as the community changes and maybe we do become, you know, who knows what happens, that demand might pop up. I don't know, Monica or Jill, if you have any.
It would be a huge cost to get there.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because,
So that won't
No.
happen.
yeah, the other, you know, Kingston is just trying it out in some of the smaller branches. And it's just extended hours, and they can, if they have a question, they can contact, you know, the main branch to get an answer. So it's not quite 24/7 there, but they were already all, you know, their books were secure and ours are not. So it would be a huge hill to climb to get to that there for us.
Okay. One question from Sandra Franks. Would the library consider taking patrons' reviews of books recently read and displaying these books?
Yes.
And we
Jill,
we had the patron recommendation stickers. So we do have that.
Jill has her online book. One of the Facebook groups is Mississippi Mills Reads.
It's open book club, online open book club. It's
Yeah.
part of our Facebook page. People are putting reviews there of their books. But yes, we probably could also put like, many reviews with books and display. It would be a special display. It might not always be up, but we could have a display of stuff. I mean, patron
Patron
books.
picks.
Yep.
And we do
Or
have
staff,
those.
or stuff.
We do have those stickers, but I'm like back to the stickers. We do have the stickers.
I like the stickers.
But we are getting a new patron catalog interface in the year, and a feature of that is going to have patrons can go on and be like, give it a star. And so that other people in Mississippi Mills will be able to see your rating on the books that you've read. So that's going to be a really great feature.
Is there anything you won't do?
I won't hook up
Serve.
people for dates.
You have to draw the line somewhere.
Okay.
While
think
I'm working.
Susan-
Sorry, I
Susan
have to
has-
specify while I'm working.
Right.
I think Susan has another question.
Yeah,
Susan?
yes, I do have another question, and it kind of builds on what Warren has just said. And I'm wondering if the Mississippi Mills libraries have put in any kind of case study on what you have accomplished, because it seems to me that, I don't know, I'm not an expert in libraries, but it seems to me that you're at the forefront. I mean, the things that you're doing, and you're continually innovating, evolving, and quickly meeting the needs of community. I think that other libraries could learn from what you're doing. And so I believe that you should be documenting and creating a case study of what you've done in our community and sharing it with others in some form, so that other libraries can benefit from what you've done and learn from your experience. I guess that's not a question.
Thanks. That's very, and I
think
do
that's
say one thing that I can say that's really unique, and I said it, and I'm not trying, but when I moved here, the staff are incredible because you say anybody comes in with anything it's always sure. And that's not really typical in a library world. There's a lot of resistance to change. So I do think, Susan, I think you've hit like that. It's because they are so willing to try stuff. We're really lucky here for sure, which is why I think it can continue to grow so much.
Yeah, but
Document this.
that's not luck, right?
It's not luck. True.
That's a culture of innovation, and it has to do with leadership and well, no, truly.
I'm just joking. Thank you, Susan.
It has to do with leadership and a culture of innovation, and yes, and in improv, it's yes, and
Yeah.
we can do this.
Yeah.
Yes, and we can do this. And so I think you've got that nailed, and it clearly shows in all of the things that you've done, and you would be remiss not to share that with the broader library community worldwide, in my opinion.
Aw.
So one last question or comment from Jan.
Yes, I'm very interested, and it follows a little on what Susan was saying in terms of your interactions with the other libraries in the areas. Like, do you get together? Do you share? Or is it very much all separate kind of silos? And I have a reason for asking this question, but I'd like to know what your comments are about that sharing with other libraries.
So we do get together. We do have, it's called Ontario Library Service, which is sort of an organization that helps libraries network together. And so we do have a geographical networking group, meet probably 3 times a year. So it's Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville. But then you can also, and now that it's Zoom, so you can bring in other people as well. And we do quite a few things. One thing with right now, we have the School Box North raising money. The donation board is here at the Elmont branch, and we're raising money, helping School Box North raise money to build an Indigenous library in a Northern Ontario community. But we've also reached out to all the libraries in Lanark and said, can you take it for a month? So if we have something like that, we do reach out to them and say, and if I have, for sure, if we have a project or a program that we can see can be better, bigger, we do collaborate a lot.
Okay, that's good to know. And the reason I ask that is because I'm on the Rideau St. Lawrence Science Fair Committee, and we often have problems connecting because it's Leeds Lanark Grenville and very small areas. It's not like being in a city. And sometimes perhaps the library is the place to connect with young people to do science too.
Yeah.
And to follow up there. So I'm quite interested in that. And there are other groups that are somewhat similar who would be nice to be able to connect with all the smaller libraries in the communities and reach people that way. So thank
Yeah.
you.
That's great.
Just one last one, maybe, and then we'll do our adieux. Anyone else want to ask? We did get one question. What amount of funding would be required for a year-round literacy program?
I see that, Jeff. I'll have to talk to Monica and we'll send him.
We'll
You'll
work
have
on
a
those
lot.
numbers.
Okay.
I am hoping that a lot of it would be volunteer. We need a coordinator
Mhm.
for sure, and then volunteers. I
Okay.
think it for two reasons that would be a great program, because it's an intergenerational program, right? So it's it would be great for both ends.
Yeah. Well, let me give my thanks then to everyone. First of all, to our three panelists,
Thank you.
Christine, Jill, and Monica. Thank you very much for donating your time to this really interesting project. And once again, to my colleagues, Mel Turner, Jan Johns, and Glenna Jones for making this all happen as well. The next lecture will be at the end of November, when Bill Adams will talk about oil pollution in the north. And if you want to know what's coming up for 2022, be patient for about a month so we can get those people to write their summaries
Nice.
and then look online. And thanks of all, mostly to all of you people who logged in and listened to this wonderful talk. Appreciate it. Oh, and if you do want to donate $1 or $2 or even $5 towards paying our Zoom bill, you're most welcome to do so by going to the almontlectures.com website and looking for the word donate. It's all done through PenPal. Okay, let's all go have a glass of wine.
Sounds good.